Alex here with a legal nuts and bolts video on fictitious firm names, also called assumed names. These are something that I only recently learned the solution to, and for a long time, probably over 10 years, I've been curious about. The main time that this came up as a sort of curiosity to me was when I worked for some collection services as a collection agent, and I didn't call people. All I did was do writs of execution all day long, garnishments, bank levies, till taps. That's all I did all day long. And part of the process is finding out who you're supposed to serve. And so I've always wondered. Well, I didn't actually always wonder, even from the whole time I worked there. It didn't come up as a sort of curiosity until my boss actually told me that the company that I worked for, Summit Collection Services, wasn't actually the name of the LLC, of the business entity. It was Pinnacle Services LLC. And I thought to myself, I put two and two together because I'm always trying to find out who to serve, whether it's a business entity I would look up in the system. It's called business entity search, or if it's a person, you try to find out where they specifically are. And I always wondered, whoa, hold on a second. Well, you can just sort of do agreements and enter into contracts and sort of call yourself some collection services. What if somebody has a problem with you and they want to serve you? And it wasn't that I had sort of a malicious intent behind it, as logically this is what I do all day long at this desk. And I was just thinking immediately, I was like, hold on a second, if I looked you up, you wouldn't come up in the system. I never had the answer to that until recently, and I basically found out that there's a chapter in Nevada called Chapter 602, and other states probably have a similar sort of system set up, where you can actually see that people are supposed to register under a separate system. I just assumed everything was under the business entity search. There's a separate system, and that's the fictitious firm name search. And I'll just go ahead and show you really quick how it works, and I'll talk more about it later at the end of the video. But this is the chapter here that explains that if you're operating under a fictitious firm name, you have to register, and the system there's apparently it's governed by the counties. So I'm going to use the one that I just talked about, which was Summit Collection Services, who I worked for. I already did this ahead of time. I already typed in the search and the name and all that, and it popped up with these results. And I could see here that Summit Collection Services, which is a fictitious firm name, is operating, and the real business entity is Pinnacle Services Inc., which I mentioned earlier in the video. So you could basically connect the fictitious firm name of the business you're dealing with. You could be contracting with them, or I don't know, whatever it is that you're doing with the business and you want to know who's behind it. You could do that by typing that name into the system. And now that I have the real name of the business entity, then I can go to business entity search, which is what I've always known about. Type that in, and I can find out the actual resident agent, the address that you're supposed to go to serve, and usually the officers. Yeah, the officers and stuff are in here. So this is a great example as to a statutory scheme that makes a whole lot of sense, that has a huge, I think, value, and just people just don't know about it. Stuff like this I wish they would teach people in school, because I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense. It's awesome. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give you a demonstration of what would happen if you searched um, for Summit Collection Services in here. This is why it's good to know this stuff. Because if you would have just gone straight to business entity search and typed in Summit Collection Services, you would get bad information. First of all, this entity, while it used to exist, is now revoked, so it's no longer valid. And I have a bad feeling that even though it's run by the same person, most likely, let's take a look. It is same person, same address, I think. You would probably file the lawsuit incorrectly. I mean, this is you would probably put this down as the defendant, which is wrong. And most likely it would either get dismissed, or you would maybe get a chance to amend, because the actual defendant is Pinnacle Services Inc. So yeah, that's an example of the fictitious firm name registry in action, showing you that if you didn't know about it, you would have made a mistake. I guess I'll talk more about the case law. I'm not going to go into the case law, guys. Just 5 cases. Mainly the Supreme Court confirms or recognizes that the purpose of the chapter is to combat fraud. There are certain cases where the Supreme Court's like, yeah, this applies. Other cases where, no, this doesn't apply. Different states may be more strict than ours, maybe less strict than ours. I'm seeing situations where there's people who may be operating under a fictitious firm name, but in the contract they may be using their actual name. So no secrecy there, no ducking and dodging, no fraud there. There's also, as far as I know, this is only really supposed to cover agreements, contracts. I don't see how this goes any further than that. So there may be people who are using fictitious firm names, but they're not actually They're not actually entering agreements with people under that name. They're doing other work. Maybe they're doing like a YouTube channel and that's all. They're not like saying, "Hey, sign this contract," or maybe they're not selling merch. Or I don't know if it matters, guys. Like as I mentioned, a lot of people who are probably using fictitious firm names are actually using their real name anyway. So for those people, I'm not sure that it matters. This is something that's good to look into because there are two significant penalties involved if you don't comply with this. The first being a misdemeanor criminal offense, which I highly doubt that they actually prosecute. They probably just warn you, or just tell you, "Hey, you need to register," or else. And then the other is there's another there. Yeah, you can't sue. So if you try and sue, it could cause you issues. If you've entered into some kind of agreement when you didn't use your real name and you use this fictitious firm name and you're not in the registry. So my understanding is that the point of all these is to really force people to use the registry. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. I actually feel a whole lot more confident now because for like 10 years it's always been a nagging suspicion that people are operating this way to just basically not be basically not be able to be targeted with a lawsuit because people won't know who they actually are. So I think that's all I have for you guys. I'm going to do another video on business licensure next, or I might do it after I finish my Greg Ellis book review. We'll see. Either the next video or the video after that. If you have any questions, feel free to post any questions you have down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.